In this week's Guiding Spotlight, we'll be shedding light and flashing back to sharing you the details of the Mueller investigation and the Mueller report from 2019 that led to the start of trouble of 45. I sat down with Brooklyn Law School professor Bill Araiza to get his point of view on the Mueller investigation and his report, and asked him briefly on where we go from here as a country after finding out about the results from the investigation. It is one of the segments that has never been seen nor shared with you on the Spotlight. We'd like to share it with you to be in the know of the facts and the truth. We've been talking about this Mueller report that just came out Friday, March 22nd, 2019. And I want to read a little bit of something from the letter that was of this Mueller report. That on Friday, on that exact day, the special counsel submitted a confidential report explaining the prosecution or declination decisions he has reached as required by 28 CFR 600.8. This report is entitled Report on the Russian Investigation into the Russian Interference in the 2016 Presidential Election. Although my review is ongoing, I believe that it is the public interest to describe the report and to summarize the principle by the special counsel and the results of his investigation. That's all I'm going to read from there. But I want to bring up something that from the media of what CNN found. So from what they've learned, that they learned that there was no collusion, and where the guy in the White House did not conspire with Russia, according to Attorney General Barr. And Mueller did not exonerate, I'm going to say this name, Trump, and evidence lacking for obstruction of justice, and there was no new indictments. But what Trump said is that the president went beyond the conclusions of Barr's letter and said the findings exonerated him. This was an illegal takedown that failed, and hopefully somebody is going to be looking at the other side. Do you believe this is fair on this?
Well, it is certainly an overstatement, at the very least, on the president's part, to say that the report, as described by Attorney General Barr, represents a total and complete vindication and exoneration. It does not.
Right.
Indeed, the letter says that the report did not exonerate the president on the obstruction charge. And so for the president to say that it was a complete exoneration is simply, at best, an overstatement, and frankly is factually seriously incorrect.
Mueller explicitly did not exonerate the president. While he made no conclusion on obstruction of justice, Attorney General William Barr made his own decision not to prosecute Trump, which is no surprise considering Trump appointed Barr knowing he doesn't believe a sitting president can obstruct justice. Do you think the results could change where he could be exonerated, or do you believe he may not be exonerated, he's still innocent until proven guilty based on collusion?
Well, it seems as though there will be no prosecutions of the president on either of these charges. According to the Attorney General, there was no collusion. And according to the Attorney General, while the report did not exonerate the president on the obstruction charge, the Attorney General himself decided that there were insufficient grounds to charge on obstruction. And that's even leaving out the question of whether a sitting president can be indicted.
Collusion is not a conspiracy. Mueller was looking at the legal definition of criminal conspiracy, which is different than the threshold of collusion Congress will be using for impeachment. How would that change on either the side of Republicans and Democrats? Who do you think will have more power? Or if someone has the power, do you think will have the power, and why would you believe that?
Well, impeachment, which is what we're talking about, is a political matter, is in fact a matter that goes beyond the technicalities of the criminal law to encompass things like maladministration of office, misuse of power, even if that conduct doesn't rise to the level of a crime. And so if more information comes out, then that presumably will strengthen the hands of those who think that regardless of the Mueller report, impeachment may be called for. Whether that means necessarily Democrats will be strengthened, whether that convinces some Republicans to go along with a move to impeach, that really depends on what information, if any, in fact, ends up coming out.
We all know that number 45 chose Barr, but he's basically like trying to hide something. Like, what do you think he's trying to hide from the Mueller report that no one else should know about? Because it's time to like get the report out so that way we know what's in there and what he did and what he did not do.
Well, Attorney General Mueller, Attorney General Barr, in the letter noted that there might be, for example, grand jury information that is in the report that perhaps, according to Attorney General Barr, should be redacted before the report goes to Congress. It's that kind of information that I think is going to be the subject of a fight between Congress on the one hand, or the House on the one hand, and the White House on the other with regard to what gets released or not. And, it really is a question of whether, in fact, the House should have access to the full report, including sensitive grand jury information. This is somewhat untested water, but it's the role of the House and of the Senate is to conduct oversight of the executive branch, and that kind of means oversight, and that kind of means everything that's in a report like the Mueller report.
Why do you think the guy in the White House that's running the country now chose Attorney General Barr as Attorney General, in your view?
Well, of course, we can't know what's in the president's mind.
Right.
Having said that, we do know that then Mr. Barr, as a private citizen, wrote an unsolicited memo to the White House expressing Mr. Barr's opposition to the special counsel's investigation. That seems to at least provide the possibility, or raises the possibility, that the president chose Mr. Barr to be his attorney general because he trusted Mr. Barr to run interference for him when it came to the ultimate disclosure of this report.
Right. Mueller's investigation has led to indictments, guilty pleas, or convictions of a half-dozen members of Trump's inner circle. He is the most corrupt president in American history. Between Mueller's investigation and what we already know, there's been enough evidence to impeach Trump 10 times over. Why would they do it so long? Why couldn't they just take like less than a year or just get it done quick? I mean, there's a lot of obstruction to be involved in here. So, but what do you think about why it should take so long to get the investigation done under who's being investigated for doing these offenses as a president?
Yeah. Complex investigations take a long time. So, for example, with the Mueller investigation, you could imagine that in order to work his way up the hierarchy of the Trump campaign, of the Trump White House, of the persons involved, he had to begin with underlings. He had to build a factual case that would and develop information that would allow him to engage in more effective questioning and investigation of people higher up. So you have to build a foundation of the investigation in order to know what to ask the people at the next rung. You have to build that level of the investigation, excuse me, in order to know what to ask the people up the next rung, and that takes a long time.
Right.
It takes analysis, it takes scheduling of meetings, it takes preparing of questions, it takes processing of the answers, and it takes strategizing about the very next steps, all to get just to the very next rung. And there are presumably several rungs, multiple rungs, that the investigation had to climb up in order to get to the very highest levels. Don't forget, this was all an investigation that was designed to culminate in the famous interview of the president that never took place.
Right.
And so in order to make that interview, which of course never happened, but in order to make it as effective as possible, the Mueller team had to have all its investigative ducks already in a row. And that takes a lot of time.
Barr's letter doesn't change the bottom line. Mueller's report only concerns of two of Trump's impeachable offenses. Congress can no longer use the ongoing investigation as an excuse to avoid holding the president accountable. Robert Mueller, he had sent people to like prison or obstructed people like Michael Flynn, for example.
Yes.
And there are three others. I can't get their names. I think Feldman.
What is Manafort?
Manafort, yes.
Papadopoulos.
Papadopoulos.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
do you really think he did good in like obstructing those men during the investigation?
Well, he certainly brought serious charges against each of these men.
Mm-hmm.
As you may remember, there was a bit of an outcry when Mr. Manafort got what seemed to be a relatively light sentence.
Yes.
Now, of course, the very next week after that, he was sentenced to a number of more years in prison.
Right.
And so he's going to be spending a substantial amount of time in jail.
Right. But the question to bring that up is, why would they give him only a certain amount of time in jail, but then later change it up later, even though more things have been coming in? But what do you think it could be the case in that situation?
Sure. It's a very simple explanation. There were two sets of charges in two different judicial districts, one in Virginia, one in the District of Columbia, two different judges, and therefore it would be as if someone had committed a crime in New York and then driven away into New Jersey and committed a crime in New Jersey. There would be two separate court cases in two separate courts with two separate sentences because of two separate crimes being committed.
So, throughout the times Robert Mueller has been doing an investigation, many people have described him as some type of investigative legend who's doing what he's doing just to make sure we get out the facts for the American people. What do you view? How would you view Robert Mueller as a person doing the investigation?
Every indication is that he did the job carefully and honorably, and amazingly, given that he did it in Washington, D.C., with no leaks.
But do you believe that, because the thing is that James Comey back in 2016 or 2017 started doing the investigation on Russia, but then he got fired by the president because of that.
Yes.
And so if James Comey had not been fired, do you believe that we would have never had the Mueller investigation? And do you believe the investigation would have been completely done by James Comey if he had not been fired?
Yes, I believe so. Indeed, it was, as you suggest, it was the firing of Comey that triggered the calls for the special prosecutor to begin with. Had the president not fired James Comey, then it's quite likely none of this would have happened.
Our special thanks to Bill Araiza of the Brooklyn Law School for breaking down the information, the truth, and the facts. We'll be right back. This has been Guiding Spotlight